Hi, I'm Tom, founder of Demand Genius and host of Demand Geniuses. This show is all about equipping B2B marketers with everything they need to convert demand to revenue. So please hit the follow button, it makes me really happy, and then enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Demand Geniuses. I am Tom Rudney, just like I was last time, and I'm going to get straight into it today. I'm very excited to introduce my guest today, actually. So I've got Darren Chait with me, who I should have checked how I'm pronouncing your surname, but Darren, how have I done?
Spot on. Perfect.
Nailed it?
Perfect. Couldn't have done it better myself.
Perfect. Well, that's good. I get just about everything under the sun when people try and do mine. So, but anyway, we're already going off topic. Darren, good to have you with us. I'll let you say hello and introduce yourself a little bit to people rather than me butcher it.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Great to be chatting. I'm Darren. I'm the CMO at beehiiv. For those that aren't familiar, beehiiv is the platform for publishers to own, grow, and monetize their audiences. So we started out as the newsletter platform, and now newsletters, podcasts, websites, digital products, all in one place. So we help creators and brands scale their audience and grow.
Yeah, and I know beehiiv a little bit. It's one of those brands that I feel like I've never really looked into much until we started talking, but I just knew, because you get newsletters constantly and it has it in the URL. So I think it's probably one that a lot of people listening to this are kind of loosely familiar with, which must be quite an interesting challenge for you, actually, because you have that loose familiarity.
But, it's something interesting, right? Because one thing we would hate is for our customers, our brands, to be building a beehiiv newsletter. They're building a Demand Genius newsletter. They're building their brand, and we're the infrastructure that's enabling them to do that, to publish great newsletter content, to host their podcast, to sell their ebooks, whatever it is. But it's their brand front and center. One of the things that I find so interesting is when people tell me they're building a Substack or they're tweeting, or that's supporting someone else's platform. But it's your knowledge and your expertise and your unique perspective. And philosophically, as a business, that's really important to us. That you own your audience. You're not supporting another business's brand.
Well, fuck it. Let's go down that rabbit hole then. So, how do you think about that as a business? I guess partly from a product perspective as well. Because on the one hand, you want to build your little kind of PLG hooks in there that get your name out there. But you also, I think that's a really cool philosophy. Like, how do you think about the trade-off between those two things?
Yeah. I like to think about Shopify versus Amazon, right? If I have a product, a widget that I produce, I create, etc., I can go and give that to Amazon, and then people are going to go to Amazon, and Amazon can control who sees my product, how it ranks, even the reviews to some extent. It can then set a price, and Amazon takes a cut of that, and whatever's left over, whatever exposure Amazon decides I get to take home for selling my product. Let's look at Shopify. Shopify is a platform. No one really goes, I'm going to go to Tom's Shopify store. They go, I'm going to Tom's store. No one really cares, what he's hosted on, what the infrastructure is. But to Tom, he'll pay per month, obviously, for Shopify to handle all that infrastructure for him. But it's his brand. And Shopify is just the infrastructure to get his product in his customers' hands. And that's how we view things at beehiiv. And it's a very different philosophical difference. That's why we don't take a cut of what anyone earns on our platform. And it's all about the custom domain, the white labeling, your own site, your own brand. You can turn on and off beehiiv branding. It's your business.
Does it limit you a bit more from a marketing perspective? Because it does changes the motion a little bit though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've just come from Calendly, right, a few months ago. I ran growth at Calendly, and Calendly has this remarkable product-led growth viral loop, right? And we'll talk more about that in a minute, no doubt. But the thing that makes Calendly so magical is the fact that when I go and book time with you, I see that you send me a link powered by Calendly. That was really great. I can now sign up for Calendly and do this again and again. Obviously, at beehiiv, when we want to power these businesses, the way we see that is, look, there is some definitely, especially on our free plans, we definitely see a good amount of traffic and signups from our footer and so on. But our growth model isn't to go and turn the reader into the publisher or into the creator, because you've got a good newsletter following. Like, what percentage of folks that your subscribers are going to become great creators tomorrow anyway? It's not naturally a viral loop. So we would rather be totally indispensable to you and help you make money and scale your audience for whatever your goal is, versus trying to, scam a few signups from your audience because they know where you're hosted. Folks that are creating, for folks that have an audience, we want to be front and center. We'll talk about how we do that, a lot of organic traffic and thought leadership and so on. But we're not in the game of driving virality by turning subscribers into customers, because in the end, that's inconsistent with our philosophy, right? As I said at the beginning, we're not there to leverage off your subscribers and put our brand above yours. That's our value proposition.
And at the end of the day, so it is a SaaS model, not a platform model, and that probably is reflected in who you're largely working with, right? Which I think, from my understanding, it tends to be more brands rather than like individual newsletter contributors. Is that fair?
No, it's a real mix. It's of brands or publishers, in like smaller publishers. But it is SaaS. It is a SaaS model. We do have a free tier, so you can build up to 2,500 subscribers in our free tier. But the other way we make money, other than SaaS, is with our ad network. So we have this world-class ad network where you as a creator, you as a publisher, get offered ads relevant to your audience that we've sourced with our ads business. You can drop them in. You don't have to do any of that work, and then we'll pay you for each click. That's another, significant revenue stream for us. It's about just shy of a third of our revenue comes from the ad network as well.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to take a bit of a step back because I've already gone down a bit of a detour. Let's just go. You mentioned your time at Calendly, so maybe take us through a little bit of just your background. And what I always think is an interesting question to ask is like, is there a step that stands out to you as being the one that was most formative in terms of the way that you think about kind of marketing and your own career progression as well?
Definitely. I had a very non-conventional start here. I started out as a corporate lawyer. I'm Australian originally, as you can hear. I mean, we share a king. Come on, we're close enough. But I started out as a lawyer. I didn't like it much at all. I learned a lot, sure, but professional services billing by the minute or 6-minute increments is crazy. From my perspective, was always really interested in the inefficiencies there. Got into tech. Was really excited about making money while I slept. And PLG specifically does that, right? The idea of building these funnels, go to sleep, waking up and having customers was just like mind-blowing to me. So got into tech. After a couple of years, moved to San Francisco and I co-founded a company called Hugo. We're a meeting workflow platform. So meeting, note-taking, agenda setting, actions, etc. Lots of summarization and those things in a pre-AI explosion world. And we built that for about 4 or 5 years. Raised a ton of capital, grew that. And I naturally ended up there just focused on growth. For a business like Hugo, which was all PLG, growth was at this weird intersection of marketing. And I always liked storytelling. I liked to write. That was my sort of legal background. But also it was the other side of your brain, which was product and numbers and the technical side of things. And it was just like this magic, like left brain, right brain thing. I didn't even know what it was at the time, but it's what I did to keep me busy. And in the summer of 2022, we got acquired by Calendly. And Calendly was looking at really going deep into our space, which they've done now beyond just scheduling. We all joined Calendly. I came in to lead growth there, inheriting obviously an amazing product with a very impressive viral flywheel, and jumped in there to sort of help take that to the next level. Did that for about 4 years, and then decided to join the beehiiv team a few months ago. But I didn't answer your question. The most formative, definitely my time at Calendly. I think what happens when you join a business like Calendly is that you learn growth with real volume. So one of the hard things about being in a startup is you don't have volume, you don't have numbers, right? So if I want to experiment, if I want to learn how levers work, or levers for our American audience, if I want to see what happens with conversion rate optimization and testing, you just don't have that luxury. Enter Calendly, booking millions and millions of meetings a week, close to 1 million signups a month at the time. We can try anything. And I just learned so much so quickly. I can experiment in 24 hours on some of our funnels. And it just was like this amazing crash course, but like hands-on internship almost crash course in any channel, in any PLG lever. And it really sort of set me on my path, 4 years ago or so as a leader in growth.
And are there things that then, because at beehiiv you have kind of reasonable scale and I think reasonable velocity of things like that, but not quite on the level that you would have had at Calendly. Are there stuff that you had to kind of unlearn or things that you thought would work at beehiiv, then you were like, oh, that just isn't what I can do here?
Yeah, beehiiv's got reasonable scale. We do a ton of A/B testing, and I'm very focused on the funnel and that experience. I think what's interesting about beehiiv is the product's more complicated by design. And what I mean by it doesn't feel complicated, but you onboarding are making a platform decision. When I sign up for beehiiv, I'm deciding to move my audience or start an audience newsletter, host my podcast, etc. So the experience that we have to provide and the funnel is much more elongated. There's so many milestones and so many different like parts to that initial experience. Calendly is a really lightweight tool that helps you solve a very discrete problem. So the flywheel and the funnel is much longer and more complex at beehiiv, and that's using definitely testing me and using a different part of my brain.
Yeah, okay. And then it's interesting going back to like, one of the things that has kind of stood out to me in doing this podcast, and I think we're at about 40 episodes now, and there's 40 kind of pretty good marketers that I've got the chance to speak to. None of them, or so few of them, went down the like conventional route to get where they are, where it's like you get a marketing manager job, and then it seems to be something that connects them. And none of them wanted to do marketing when they started, and they kind of landed there. Like, are there stuff that from your legal background that you think have really, really like translated to marketing that other people could maybe kind of try and take on board?
I feel like the biggest imposter in the world now as a CMO, every time someone says to me, like, what would you do as a marketer? I'm like, me? I'm not a marketer. Exactly. And it's really funny because like, what is a marketer, right? Like in general, and we know we have the T-shaped marketer and all these models and so on, but there's just so many different archetypes of marketer. When I think about my background, like there's definitely areas of marketing or growth that I have a much deeper rooted interest, experience, skills. There's others where I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's others where I've seen what good looks like and I've got a general idea and I know the people around me. And then I would also say in 2026, with LLMs and with the tools available to us, the job of a marketer has changed again anyway. So even if you are an age-old marketer who's been doing this for decades, what worked then doesn't work now. And I think you just got to find this like hand in glove kind of opportunity for who you are. I mean, when beehiiv came to me, beehiiv has an incredible brand, as does Calendly, and they have an amazing product marketing muscle, the way they release and the way they tell that story. There were lots of opportunities around how we grow and making that repeatable and how we measure that and so on. And that's where I'm super strong. And I was able to sort of come in, continue to ride this incredible brand wave and story and help them double down, but really add a lot more focus in those areas. And, you know, I may not be the right CMO forever here, right? And we might, hopefully I'll evolve as the business evolves, but it's very point in time. So I would do away with any sort of traditional marketer archetype or what is the path. I don't see any place for that in 2026.
So and maybe there's no place for archetypes, but is there a particular like skill set or a particular kind of combination of strengths that you particularly look for that you think is very relevant in 2026?
Yeah, totally. Marketers need to be tech savvy. And what I mean by that is they need to understand how to use the tools around them, how to continue to innovate in there, how they need to understand how it all connects together. Go-to-market engineering is a completely new job title that often commonly would sit within marketing. How do you manage those people if you don't understand the lay of the land there? So being very technical, not number one. That used to be an outlier. You used to have technical marketers versus content marketers versus brand. That's now table stakes. Number two, and I was going to mention this later on, but I'll do it now anyway. Some of the best advice I ever got was from a guy named Shane Murphy-Reuter. He was the CMO of Webflow, and then he became the president at Calendly. The best CMOs are actually CFOs, which is like, what? And he said this to me at day one, even before he started. He's like, to be a great CMO, you have to be an awesome CFO. And as I like dug deeper into that insight and learned from him, what he means, or what I understand he means, which I've really taken with me in how I operate today, is the only way to be an effective CMO is to deeply understand your business, the waterfall, the mechanics, what drives traffic, what drives sign-offs, what drives conversion, what drives expansion, what drives churn, and all the different levers that impact each stage of that. And if you understand your business better than anyone else in the business, as if you're the CFO, is what he's getting at, you will be an incredible marketer. Because what is marketing, right? Like marketing is knowing what channels and what tactics to use when. And there's no shortage of ideas. Sit down with Claude and ask Claude to come up with 10 different campaigns. Like that's the easy bit. It's knowing what levers to pull and where to deploy those ideas. Everyone wants to make more money, assuming that's your goal, fine. But we can do that by driving a ton more traffic that converts in the same way. We can improve the quality of that traffic so it converts better. We can improve the ARPU, or the average order value, so each bit of existing traffic that converts is worth more money. We can keep all of that the same and get them to expand. We can keep all of that the same to get them to retain better. And understanding all of that so I can apply my ideas and skills, and then the real, hands-on stuff, the copy, the creative, the optimizations, that's the easy bit. And that was a big turning point in my career, learning that and testing that out. And now it's how I operate. Ask anyone at Beehiiv. Week one for me was building out the waterfall, building out the dashboards, deeply understanding the business, not sitting there with a whiteboard coming up with the next out-of-home campaign idea.
Yeah, I love that though. I think it's something that a lot of marketers forget, a lot of marketers, if you ask them what their job is, like, we do marketing campaigns, and I think that's completely wrong. Like, your job is to bring the product to market, you understand how you position within that, all of those fundamentals. And I do think they're coming to the fore a lot more now as the cost of ideas and the cost of execution has been driven way down. It becomes a lot more about those fundamentals.
And the channels are changing, right? So your playbook as a very experienced marketer, I'm going to come in and I'm going to optimize our site to get it ranking much better. And I'm going to launch my standard LinkedIn thought leadership ads with some meta funnels. Like, that stuff is just becoming more and more irrelevant by the minute, right? What worked last year doesn't work this year. So if you don't deeply understand your business and the funnel and where the opportunities are, your playbook of tactics is just becoming less and less relevant. You're reinventing that in every role in every business.
I think the difficult bit is not finding things to do. It's prioritizing which ones fit you, because you can go on and talk to Claude, or you can go on LinkedIn and you'll have no shortage of noise telling you exactly what you should be doing. It's filtering through all that I find really hard.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So what was because you're not too far in at Beehiiv. So and obviously your kind of background as a lawyer, a commercial lawyer that you said was one thing that must have helped you there with that, like, CFO mindset, right? You can look at the business from a bit of a distance and understand the mechanics of it. But so when you came into Beehiiv, for anyone who's maybe about to start as a CMO or marketing leader in a new company, what did you do? Like, what were the steps that you went through to understand the mechanics of Beehiiv's business?
Yeah. So 3 things. Step 1 was building out the dashboards or the spreadsheets, or however you want to understand the business. So interviewing a whole lot of people internally, getting access to data. This has never been easier, by the way, because go and use Claude, connect the use the MCPs for the various analytics platforms. If you don't know SQL, you can Claude will generate it for you. I don't need an analyst anymore. I used to, in previous roles, week 1, go and make friends with the analyst team. You do need analysts. I don't mean that, but I don't need analysts to understand the business, the basics. I need analysts to help me with insights and the deep work, not just reporting.
Storytelling from it.
That's right. Exactly. So step 1 for me is that let's get access to the data. Let's rebuild and just see what's happening here. Each month, we get a few million people hit our website. This percentage sign up. This percentage will go on to activate. What does that mean? And really just get my head around the business. That's the quant side. 2 is the qual side. Talk to customers. It's so cliched, right? And I get it. You might go and listen to call recordings. You might want to go and email some customers that are recommended or introduced to you. You might want to go and survey through using Winter or one of those platforms, Respondent, where you can go and find them loosely in the market. You need to hear from them, because by the time you hear how we talk about our product and the story, it's been through so many different filters and biases. I want to hear from you. Like, tell me about Beehiiv. What does Beehiiv do for you? What would you do without Beehiiv? What did you do before? What would lead you to churn now? How do you articulate the value of Beehiiv? All of these questions. 5, 10, 15 customers, the penny will drop very, very quickly. So that's 2. And 3 is obviously across the team. There's a lot of institutional knowledge, and that's a needle to thread, because we've always done it this way, and that never works for us. They're not helpful insights, because obviously times are changing and the way you execute changes. But I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, we don't have a webinar program at Beehiiv. Have you guys thought about it? Why? What did we learn? And really just try and, gather up all the learnings that you can through talking to the team. So those 3 things was like my first few days, basically, or, first couple of weeks. And then you can sit down and say, okay, where are our bets? Like, you're a portfolio manager. What are the big swings? What are the small swings? What are the safe swings? What are the high risk swings? And make sure there's that diversity in there. And then you start moving chips, and some are real slow, some are real fast. And you start to look at your portfolio every day of what you have in market. And on a weekly basis, you see if it's paying off or if it's not.
And then compare that to Calendly a little bit. And for people listening to this who maybe don't know, like, Calendly to me stands out as one of the better examples
really that I could think of a really well done product led growth engine. And that was the kind of key driver. Like when you look at Calendly versus Beehive, what are the biggest mechanical differences in terms of how those businesses work, and how does that impact the growth strategy?
Yeah, look, there are different stages. Calendly is, we look at things we looked at things incrementally. So with that volume, and there are hundreds of millions of ARR at that volume, you're really starting to look at, like, what levers do I have? What experiments can I run? What happens if we make this tweak to the booking flow? What if we expose free users to this next time they come into app? What can we do from a lifecycle standpoint? You're measuring it very carefully, and you're making decisions like, go or no go. So it's very, very incremental. And it's much more scientific because of that. Beehive is much more at the big swings. Beehive's doubling year on year, right? And it's very hard to double a business by making a small change to a checkout flow, like, or the equivalent. We should make those small changes because we want that flow to be the best we can. I don't want to be wasting any percentage points of conversion, but that's not going to be enough. We have to be making these big swings in market, these big campaigns, these big stories, these big launches, and so on. So I'm using sort of different channels and different skills because of that. But fundamentally, it's still the same, right? Like, yes, we might have a big multi-$100,000 out-of-home campaign for Beehive that's not perfectly measurable, but we should still operate at the same way of, what's the bet? Why are we making it? What are the insights? How do we measure it? Even though it's hard in some cases for those type of brand campaigns. And let's see what happens afterwards. And then we double down, we roll it back, or, we learn something and go from there.
Does it change the way that you need to operate day in and day out? Because I guess what you're describing is really success at Calendly is about like velocity of experimentation. Whereas at Beehive, there is a little bit more of, I don't want to say more creativity, because I think it takes creativity to keep coming up with experiments. But I think you kind of know what I'm getting at. It's a bit more about the big projects that you launch.
Definitely. My right brain is working a lot harder at Beehive for sure. My left brain maybe a little less than at Calendly. It's also the way we were structured at Calendly. Like I had a partner who was very, very much driving creative and so on. At Beehive, yeah, it's definitely that mix. It's a total mix, and we've got a great team. We have an amazing creative director. We have an amazing growth leader. All of these things together let us do that. Each business is different, and wherever I end up next in my career might be one way or the other, or it changes within the business. What the business needs at a certain point in time is what you have to do.
Yeah, and I love that. That's it's one of my biggest like philosophies that I tend to live by when I hire for any job. Actually, is I want people who write playbooks, not run them. Like I think there's a lot of people who come in and they go from business to business, and it's like, this is the playbook that I run. This is what's worked for me in the past. I'm going to come here and I'm going to implement that same thing. And that just, first, it just sounds so boring.
And they're getting unstuck more than ever because the rate of change of our environment has never been faster. So what we did was unbelievable for you last year in your last role might be completely irrelevant now. Right. And I think it's pretty easy to spot those folks. You just got to, when I meet someone, if I'm interviewing for the first time and they've got a very strong point of view for what we should do straight up without understanding anything about the business, that's a red flag to me. Right. How do you know what, that we should go and double down on this type of content or these types of campaigns or this type of whatever based on what you've done before? Because everything's got to be bespoke for the environment you're operating in.
Yeah, so that classic person, I think it's harder than ever for like the VP level marketer or in any function really. It's like, I just want to do strategy now. And I think you can spot from a mile off the people who have done strategy for far too long and they don't actually understand the world that they're now operating in. I think it's going to be a very hard 5 years or so for that kind of people.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
You seem to really love the process. Like you seem to get excited, not by any outcome, but by the process of figuring this shit out and like building a plan. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think I still love seeing like our output in the real world. There's nothing better than like, we're just shipping a big onboarding update at the moment. I saw them with a staging site. I'm like, oh my God, like there's nothing more exciting for me than seeing that come to life, nerding out on that. I think the one thing I'll say though is I like building a lot. And that's why I'm having a great time at Beehive. And I think any great, and at Calendly too, any great executive, especially in the go-to-market world, they need to understand the tools. And I know that doesn't mean necessarily that they're spending their days building, but if you kind of appreciate the how to build and how things come together, I don't think you're going to be a great growth leader anymore. It's like the builder, right? Your general contractor, as the Americans call it, your builder who's building you this massive house. They're not sitting there, laying bricks or, or laying tiles. But they can, and they understand what
Mm.
happens if the fall of the tiles, isn't right to the drain, or if the bricks aren't perfectly plumb, or whatever happens, because they've done the time laying bricks. And from time to time, when they're under the pump, they'll get in there on the bricks, and they know how that works. And I think that's more relevant than ever. The marketing or go-to-market executive that lives in slide decks has their time's up in 2026. You've got to understand the tools, the how, the approach. I might not know the ins and outs of Clay, but I know exactly what Clay does. I know exactly that I can go and take an API and then call a webhook when I get a response, and some of the use cases for that. And I can help guide the team for what we want to do. And they can figure out exactly how.
Does that worry you at all when you're thinking about like hiring and developing younger marketers at beehiiv? Because obviously that time, it depends on what you call on the tools a little bit, right? But obviously your time writing content is going to be a lot less now because you're going to use AI to help you with that process. Like that's still doing the work, but it's very different. Do you think something will get lost if you're not doing it yourself end to end, or it's just a natural evolution? And
No, the same way, I don't think I'm losing anything as a marketer by leading a team of marketers. I don't think a marketer who is relying on LLMs and AI tools to help them do their job is going to lose anything. In fact, the speed at which they can do things and get things out means they're going to learn more. The mistake would be if you outsource your job. Just like if I sit there living in the slide decks and say, "Hey, content team, hey, performance team, like you guys need to do this and go have fun, and I don't really care how you do it, just show me the output." And the same goes for hiring AI, because that's really what the AI tools are doing. They're giving everyone an army of maybe slightly more junior employees to work for them, even if you're an IC yourself.
great for anyone on a power trip, just like me.
That's right. It's the head count that the budget didn't approve.
Exactly. I manage like 50 people and none of them talk
Mm,
back.
very easy to deal
I
with
think
the poor
what
performers.
Yeah, for sure. You just, cancel that agent. But one thing it is putting a premium on is judgment. And I guess I've not thought about this before, but I'm wondering whether, like, is judgment sharpened by managing a lot of AI agents, or is it weakened? There's something that forms my judgment on what a good piece of content is, which comes
Yeah.
from writing a piece of content, writing 20 pieces of content, working out which ones I think are good. But at the same time, I'm now reviewing 100 and editing them. Like, do you think judgment will be sharper or blunter based on the way
Yeah.
that we're operating now?
When I studied law in Australia, you can't just do law on its own out of high school. You have to combine it with something. So I did business. And then in business, they said, what major are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know what's useful. Accounting. I guess I have to do tax returns one day. I'll do accounting. Boring as fuck. But anyway, studied accounting. And I remember sitting in the accounting classes, and we get like a exercise book with lines, and we're learning like ledger journal entries, right? So, when you payroll is debit this and credit that. And I'm thinking, like, this doesn't make any sense. Everyone's using Xero and QuickBooks and MYB and all of these SaaS tools to manage accounting, where this is all automated. Why am I sitting there learning how to do ledger entries for accounting? And I view it much the same with marketing. It is really important that you know how to write, you know how to tell a story, you know what great looks like. Same for design. I can accelerate my output with production design. I'm not going to produce 50 different variations of the same asset. I can ideate 10 different directions before I settle on something. But a good designer still knows how to push the pixels and edit design. They're not just sitting there, being a prompt engineer for designers. So I think it's the same. I think good marketers still need to learn how to do it, and then they can hire people to scale it. But if you think that you can be a good content marketer and a terrible writer, you don't know, because your job is to prompt agents, I think you're making a mistake, and you're outsourcing that judgment, and it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I agree. I think of it because I often talk to like family members and I'm talking to them about AI, and I was curious like how kids in school are using it. And I remember when my uncles was like, "No, you can't use AI." Blah, 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 blah. I was like, "Well, would you have stopped me using a calculator?" And I think there's
Yeah,
something
that's right.
very analogous. Like, no, you wouldn't have. You would have probably taught me to do like 5 + 5 without one, which I can just about do. But I think that it'll take a while. But even that was frowned upon in my very early days at school. And then it took a while for people to be like, well, hold on, why would we take this
Why
tool
would
out
you?
of their hands? They're going to have it for the rest of their life.
There's also like a lot of busy work, like in between. So I think a lot about like summarizing things or manipulating data, like CSVs and cleaning things up. And that work is what takes hours out of my day, but doesn't add value to what I do.
Yeah.
And the in between means that, like what I was saying earlier, like our analysts now are doing genuine insights and analysis. They're helping us with real deep, like modeling and regression analysis and things that can help us make the right business decisions. Whereas the job 12 months ago for an analyst in a SaaS company was reporting, dashboarding, pulling CSVs, and a little bit of that, of real analysis where you can. So it's the same across all of marketing in my mind. You get to do the real value add work that requires real judgment and not all the crap in between.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of thinking about it, actually. It's like what it's doing is pulling the impact tasks together. So there used to be 4 hours of buffer and busy work that had to sit between 2 impact tasks. And now there's 20 minutes of it. And it's while you're making a coffee.
That's it. Exactly right. Or while we're recording a podcast.
That's
what's going on right now. Claude, it's probably why I dropped out before, because Claude's killing all my CPU. But anyway,
it's one thing I've noticed. I was doing I've got some guys running right now. I noticed that yesterday though, it absolutely kills my machine, but it really upsets me whenever I have to stop them.
Yep, exactly. I know.
It's terrible. But I want to talk about newsletters a little bit as well, and just get your take, obviously, with what you're doing at the moment on what makes a really good newsletter. And part of that, selfishly, is just because we're planning on launching one soon.
Yeah.
I guess the easiest place to start is in your time at beehiiv, what's the biggest? What's the best way to ask it? Yeah. What are the biggest things that you've learned about newsletters that you maybe didn't know before, and what makes them successful?
Newsletters, the reason, it's funny, right? Like we've been talking about email for decades and the end of email and so on. And what we see about newsletters is real knowledge from someone that I trust, that I've subscribed to, that is teaching me or educating me or sharing something that I care about. And we actually see in general, even back to what we we're saying about AI, the use of AI in producing newsletters, it's on the actual content production. It's actually very seldom. Like we don't see many of our successful publishers producing complete newsletter content using LLMs. They help with outlines. They can use our MCP to understand what types of content resonate best with their audience. The subject lines, all of that, sure. And I think that's a very smart thing to do. But the crux of what you're doing is really like your brain, an extension of your brain. Because remember what a newsletter is, right? You've gone and said, hey, Ryan, I'm Tom. I know something about something. Here's a preview of that. Someone's come along. Maybe you don't, but you've convinced them you have. Someone's come along on top of all the other crap that they get bombarded with every day. They've said, you know what? This guy does know something about it, or I enjoy listening to him, or watching him, or reading him saying something about something. I'm going to give him my email address, which is mine, and I want him to come into my inbox every week or every month or every day, whatever the cadence is. And I'm going to read that a lot of the time. And I'm going to keep doing that. And that is a pretty big deal, like a pretty big transaction, right? It's not me scrolling a feed. It's not me opening a Chrome tab that I'll close in 3 minutes. It's me giving you permission to jump into my space, my inbox, my devices, etc. So remembering that, and remembering that people are coming to you for a unique point of view because it's you, because you've piqued their interest, because you've got the resume, whatever it is something to keep in mind. And that's where you see the success. The content I read every day, I mentioned Kyle Poyer earlier. He's a beehiiv creator, very strong in the SaaS PLG space. So I continue to learn so much from Kyle, and he deserves that spot in my inbox, and I'll open it every time within, an hour or two of getting that, and I learn something and I pay as well. So that's number one, I think, with newsletters. Remembering that. Number two, just getting a bit nerdier, consistency. You don't even realize subconsciously being there on a regular cadence is absolutely critical. Yes, you could, if you said to me, when does Kyle in the example publish? I can't tell you that it's Suck Tuesdays or whatever day it is. But if it's been a while without Kyle, I lose that habit. I lose that trust. I lose that expectation. So really, really important to be consistent. And three, which is an emerging trend that we're obviously very bullish on strategically, is the multi-channel. So everyone consumes content differently. We know, I explained to you at the beginning, why we're so bullish on owning your audience, having that direct relationship. I know who you are. You've opted in. I have your details. I'm not relying on some algorithm or some feed to determine who sees the light of, which content sees the light of day. But surrounding your audience with content in different types, we've just seen this magical aggregate effect. So the idea of having your newsletter audience, sending them to your podcast, having a guide, an ebook, a webinar, a one-on-one coaching, or a digital product that you can go and sell to them or share with them, going and building a website that brings it all together. All of this and surrounding that audience is where the magic starts to happen. You're more than a newsletter brand, or you're more than a newsletter sender or author at that point. You're a publisher, you're a creator, you're someone that knows a lot, and I want to consume in any format that suits me.
And that's something that I've thought about quite a lot and that we've talked about on this podcast with other folks before, is the idea like you don't want to build your house on rented land. Like you have to leverage social channels and you have to use algorithms, but if it's not all with a view to ultimately bringing them into your sphere, you're kind of just going to be, you don't actually have anything there. There's nothing defensible. There's your audience.
That's right. Everyone's got a horror story about an algorithm and so on. But to my point earlier as well, like I don't want to build a Substack. I don't want to build a Twitter feed. I want to build Darren's audience and, whatever, however you're branding it. Because that is going to stick with me for life. And whatever your use case is, we see a lot of success with B2B brands. It's really interesting, actually, obviously what's happening in the content marketing world right now. But brands like Ramp or Brex or these big B2B brands, and HubSpot's acquired 3 newsletters in the last year. What they're doing is they're realizing that they can produce really high quality thought leadership. People can develop an affinity and start consuming that content, and they become pipeline. That's an amazing, obviously, customer acquisition strategy. Now, if I'm reliant on someone else's feed or algorithm for that, I can't control what's going to happen. I can't connect those readers to my CRM. I can't track them through, nurture them, do what I need to do to turn them into pipe. So it's for any use case, it's incredibly important that you own that audience.
I mean, the hardest thing to get at the moment is attention, right? Is to cut through the noise and just get a message in front of someone. It's incredibly expensive. So if you can own that, and also as a marketer from a career perspective, if you're worried about your kind of place in the AI world, build an audience. I guarantee you someone will hire you because you solve their biggest problem in a pretty easy way. How do you, if I'm a brand launching a newsletter, and I think what I've heard from you here is that it's something that needs to be a bit more personal, and it's kind of a direct line into a person's brain, and that connection is seems to be what really drives success. And that was something I was thinking about for Demand Genius. I was like, there's 2 ways that we could play this. One, it needs to be everything written by me. I need to do it on a Sunday morning, try not to be too hungover, and give a good kind of put something a bit more personal. Or the other one is you go down the brand route and it's like, this is a summary of our latest research, and that's one of the other like unique advantages we have. It sounds like it's the first that would be the route. Like, but if I'm thinking of, and I'm meandering towards a question here, if I'm at a big brand, so I want to not launch a newsletter, do I need to go and get my CEO to write it? Like, what's the best way to do it without that, I guess?
Yeah, no, there's actually, I'm talking a lot about Kyle today, lucky him, but he's got this great article from a few weeks ago, maybe, where he talks about the different types of content and what makes people listen. So, for example, a really great producer of content is Carter. Now, Carter has a unique perspective because they do the cap table management, so they know how much equity everyone has and the salaries often that go with that, so compensation, and they know about outcomes, right? Because with M&A and so on, and IPOs and whatever, they see what happens to employee equity. So they've got this really unique perspective, and they have this unbelievable content machine that you can subscribe to that has all of these insights regularly. I have no idea who's behind it, but their brand is so strong because I know that I can trust them with that unique perspective. Obviously, in media, we see that all the time. Time, for example, is all the time. Time is a big customer of ours. They have an amazing newsletter product that people are subscribing to because they trust the brand and they like the quality of reporting. I couldn't name any of the journos or authors in the Time newsletters, but I read that every couple of days. So you can go either way. I don't think that's the unique insight that you have to build it on the back of an individual human's brand.
Hey, so we talk a lot about information gain, and we think that's the most important thing actually as people adjust to like content in the AI world. There needs to be a reason for you to be citable, right? If all you do is sum up the old content playbook is you find a high intent or high value or high volume query, you summarize knowledge against that query, and the best query wins. That was search. right? Well, now AI can do that for anyone at any moment on a bespoke
Yeah.
basis. The only thing that makes anything useful to a human or a machine is if it produces like net new knowledge. And we have this framework that it's like it's interpretive gain, which is a new slant on existing knowledge. There's genuine new. So what you're describing is like newsletters as a format is like a forcing function for information gain content that adds that perspective. And I think most brands could actually really benefit from taking that into just content in general.
Yes, I agree. Newsletters are the distribution channel, but these are insights that are relevant to content. I would just push back a little bit on the aggregate, like the aggregate versus, distill or bespoke insights or whatever we want to call them. To some extent, you're right. Sure, I can go and say to any LLM, can you tell me all the news, all the political news in the United States in the last 24 hours? Sure. But you're really diminishing the value of aggregation here because imagine if like Morning Brew and our founders of beehiiv came from Morning Brew, but Morning Brew was effectively a news aggregator. And I know it was a little bit older now, but what they did really well is they knew what bits of content and news and interest were going to be relevant to me as a certain persona that reads their content. So we see lots of really successful newsletters, for example, that are very ICP or persona specific, who say, you know what, marketers are going to be really interested in, or B2B tech marketers are going to be really, really interested in the news this week. It's very hard to do that with a generic LLM. You can go and aggregate based on keywords and search, and that's all out of the way, sure. But pulling together a set of content that's relevant to me as a persona, there's still a lot of human value in there.
I think that's fair. I think maybe what I'm describing is a bit more in terms of like B2B content marketing, and certainly situations where the content isn't the product. The content is meant to be a kind of driver for something else and a way of hooking people in. And I think that's where we've just seen in the data information gain is critical. But I think, yeah, you're describing a slightly different thing where it's like news and things like that. I can see the curation element is still
right.
huge, but it's a different goal.
That's right. And newsletters, by definition, are where content is the product. Like newsletters are a distribution channel for content. If you have a poor product, if your content is shit, you're not going to drive the opens and engagement and growth straight up. We see that time and time again.
Let's finish with a dumb question. What's the difference between a newsletter and just a string of emails?
It's a very good question. We talk about this a lot because email marketing has something different. Look, I think it's a two-way relationship. The example I gave you earlier, right? A newsletter is someone saying, here's my email address, here's my details. Please give me more of this every week. Email marketing or a string of emails. And legally, there's probably no difference because you have to opt in a lot of places, whatever. But email marketing is you trying to push something onto me that I haven't engaged with. And because of that, open rates, clicks, engagement, unsubscribes, like just in the newsletter space, are a fraction of what they are, in any sort of life cycle or transactional email world. So I think that's the big difference. There's also a really strong undertone thesis brand that sits amongst all the newsletter content that stitches it together. That the folks follow along with. And even though the tech at the core is probably not that different, the relationship you have with your reader, with your subscriber is.
To the relationship and the tone and I guess the outcome, because the newsletter is the outcome or the outcome in itself, right? Rather than it necessarily just being a mechanism for promoting something different.
Well, that's right. I'm talking a lot about my audience, right? I don't know. I've never referred a Calendly where we've got an email database and a list that's in the hundreds of millions. I don't call them my audience. They're just people that are charging me money in Braze. They're not engaged necessarily. Some are. They're all worth different things. Whereas my newsletter audience, my crew, right? They're people who liked me, who want to be here, who want to listen to me, who want to learn something, who want to share. And again, when we talk about lots of channels come to play, they listen to my podcast, they buy my products, they visit my site. It's a very, very different relationship to just traditional email marketing.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Right. Before I let you go, I'm going to do a couple of quick fires that we like to do at the end of every episode. So the first one that I'm going to give you is there like an AI tool or use case that you absolutely love? Like the thing that's just like blown your mind?
I've said already, but let me say it again. MCPs and connecting my LLMs to my tools have just let me explode as a marketer. Like being my own analyst, being able to query, Ahrefs or SEMrush or whatever, that has just completely changed connecting my LLM to every tool I use.
Yeah, no, I think the context is the biggest difference between using an LLM well and using it like most people do, which is like I put in a prompt to get an answer. The
Exactly.
chain of reasoning is so much better.
And scheduled jobs, I might add as well, right? With Claude Desktop, scheduling. Hey, every week, like I know on a Monday, I'm going to want to know what happened last week. I want to know what's happening in these channels. It just runs like I have a moment of delight every day when I get there, and I've got Slack messages and other outputs, spreadsheets built, and whatever else.
Yeah, well, we've done the same, and I've got all of that feeding into kind of context docs that then the whole team has access to, so everyone can go and be like, "What's this person working on this week?" So we're trying to cut down the amount of time that we spend on stand-ups, just updating people pointlessly and making
Game
bad jokes.
changing.
Yeah.
Love it.
For you, where should I go next? This is a bit of a fun one. If you had unlimited budget for one campaign or one bet, maybe is a better way of putting it. And the way that I like to think of this is like the thing that your CEO would never be stupid enough to actually approve. What would you do?
I am such a sucker for big out of home. I would take over a couple of cities with an insane out of home spend. Out of home, firstly, in 2026, brand is the biggest moat you've got. And that's how you build brand. But that's how you become one way to become a household name. And you can surround someone who makes you then believe that your brand is incredibly prolific. If I take over 2 subway stations, right? The subway station you get on in the morning and the subway station you get off, you're going to go and tell someone that our brand is over the entire, that we're everywhere. That on beehiiv is the biggest thing ever. Everyone's talking about it. No, I've just hit 2 stations, for $50,000 a pop for a week. And a lot of our ICP, we know, live in this area and commute to that area. So I would go to town in the key cities where our customers live, our prospects live with out of home.
Nice. I think that's probably something good. Like for some B2B, I think B2B brands don't tend to do big things like that because it's harder to target it and understand that you're going to reach your prospects. But I think you probably could do it. And certainly there'd be some brands out there that could very clearly pinpoint like clusters where their ICP lives.
Yep. Yeah. It obviously depends on who you're building for.
And then for you personally, like, is there a skill or a trait that you have that you feel has been most impactful for you?
Again, I'll just tie it all together. That CFO mentality as a CMO, I think is where I've added the most value. When I come in and I feel like I have the best grasp of the business mechanics, I'm going to be the best marketer, but I add the most value to the company, and it's definitely part of my secret sauce. That's not so secret.
Yeah, it's not anymore. You just said it.
Fine, do it. Go for it.
Yeah, you're
It's worked for me. No guarantees, but it's definitely made me who I am as a marketer.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then final one, just before I let you guys, I always like to give you was there one recommendation that you have? And actually, I'm going to say, what's the best newsletter that isn't Kyle Poyer?
Ooh, best newsletter that isn't Kyle Poyer. There's so many. There's one called Growth Daily. It's Marketing Max's newsletter. Firstly, there's 2 reasons why I love it. Firstly, it's that example we were talking about earlier of that valuable curation. I'm a marketer every day. What's happening out there? I'm not keeping up with big algorithm changes and crazy campaigns that crushed it or flopped, but this is just giving me the bullet point lowdown of what I need to know to talk to be a successful marketer every day. But something that's very impressive to check out is how natively and how well he promotes his product and what he's selling. And I think that is something that is quite, you can see without it being offensive, how he's driving a funnel from high quality content to leads for his business. So yeah, Growth Daily, big fan.
Nice. I like that. You can kind of peel back the curtain. I think marketers, game recognizes game, right? Marketers like good marketing.
That's it. Exactly.
And then really final this time is just give you an opportunity to promote anything that you're doing that you want to promote and let people know where they can find you.
Really, yeah. Obviously, if you are a publisher, if you're a creator and you're not, or you want to be one rather, I highly recommend you get started on beehiiv. But in general, always love talking about this stuff. Find me on LinkedIn. You can just search Darren Chait, and I'm definitely producing more and more content and getting deeper into the creator world. Check us out. We actually just put out a pretty sweet video today talking about that topic of owning your audience, which is one that I'm obviously have strong views on. We spoke about it. I'd post that on LinkedIn and you should check it out. But otherwise, feel free to hit me up anytime.
Awesome. And he does sometimes respond because that's how we ended up on this podcast.
True. I try.
Cool. Darren, thank you. It's been a very, very insightful 54 minutes and 25 seconds. So thank you for coming on.
Loved it. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye-bye.